History happened everywhere. A random place, a random time, and a topic pulled from the hat. The challenge: find the fascinating, uncover the unexpected, and share the stories. You're listening to... History happened everywhere. Hello and welcome to History Happened Everywhere. My name is Ryan Weir and I am here in the studio as always with the quiver to my bow. It's Mr. Peter Goddard.
I've always longed to make you quiver. Or is that not what you meant?
That's not at all what I meant. Now I'm slightly disturbed.
Quite right too.
So, Pete, last week the Dersolator randomly selected for you Light in Slovenia during the 1970s. So how's that worked out for you?
Well, I thought it was going to be really easy and there'd be a really huge story about a laser light show that took place or something like that. And it wasn't actually that straightforward. So what I ended up finding was lots of stuff, but lots of kind of diverse things. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of little different stories with you today. We're going to discover some Slovenian food. We're going to have a little bit of drink by the bonfire. We're going to learn about communist industrial design.
Wait, communist industrial design?
You're always going on about wanting to know more.
I'm clapping my hands.
And of course, we'll be catching the super sounds of the Slovenian 70s.
Well, I'm excited. Why don't we get started and tell me a little bit about Slovenia?
All right, I will do. Here we go. So, welcome to Slovenia. We're in Central Europe. You are aware of, I'm sure, of Italy.
I call it the pizza place.
The pizza place with the boot-shaped nation poking down into the Mediterranean.
Yes.
If you go to the very north of Italy and take a turn to the right, you will be in Slovenia immediatly.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It is, in our heads, Eastern Europe, but it's very much the beginning of Eastern Europe. Well, it's got Austria to the north, Hungary to the northeast. Consequently, it's another one of those kind of slightly crossroadsy countries, which means that they have in their history a lot of back and forth between various empires.
Okay. Is it a very big country?
It's a small country, actually, I would say. It's about 20,000 square kilometres, so that's less than 4% of France.
Whoa, that's tiny.
It is tiny. Its population is only 2.1 million.
That's not very much at all.
No, London is, I think, about 10 million. So that's a fifth of London.
That's crazy.
And one of the interesting things about it is quite small, but it's also, in the matter of coastline, particularly small. It's only got 47 kilometres of coast.
I mean, I didn't know it even had coast, so that's more than I was expecting.
It's a bit like, do you remember last time we were talking about Benin and it had the neighbouring country, Togo, had...
But they hadn't, but actually had stolen a lot of prime beach real estate.
Exactly. Well, something relatively similar happened here when Italy has a bit of Italy that pokes out into what, had you drawn a relatively straight line, would have been Slovenia.
Yeah, but it's Italy. Let them have it.
Culturally, they're very similar in that part of the world, and obviously in these border areas. What's really the difference, Italy, Slovenia, between friends, eh? Ask that question at 1945 and you'll get a very different answer. Yeah. Its capital city is Ljubljana.
That's the one that's spelt with lots of L's and lots of J's.
J's and L's all over the shop. As a nation, it's about 70% Catholic.
Okay.
Its national anthem, I'm not going to play.
Well, I insist.
Not right now, my friend.
I love the national anthem.
I will give you some anthem treats later. But
Pete, please.
For very good reasons, I will only be showing that later on in the show.
Fine.
Flag-wise, they've got a white, blue and red horizontal stripes on their flag.
Serbian-esque.
Yeah, it's classic Slavic colours, actually. A lot of the area you'll see flags of our entire region having very similar colours in the kind of the same shades as well. They also have a little shield of the coat of arms of Slovenia on their flag.
Pimped it up
a little bit. It's a developed economy. It's got some tourism, including gambling tourism.
No way.
Yeah, Slovenia has the highest percentage of casinos per 1,000 inhabitants in the European Union.
That's a lot of casinos.
It's a lot of casinos, and that's one of the reasons people go there. But it's also good for skiing, I'm sure you know.
Wow.
As a keen man on the slopes as you are.
Yeah, that's what I'm picturing. I'm picturing lots of mountains.
Yeah, it's a mountainous country. There's the Alps in the north.
Okay.
And then as you come down, it's still pretty hilly. It's a hilly old nation, very forested as well, which is going to be relevant later.
Right.
Skiing-wise, with 2017, it was found to be one of the cheapest skiing locations in Europe, so that's nice. And depending how bold, are you a good skier?
No, I've never been skiing.
Well, I think the first thing you should try is have a go on the world's largest ski jump, which is the site of 60 world record jumps. So I think that would be a good introduction to skiing.
I do. Okay. Do I get a very sexy, slender, lycra fitting suit?
You do. You can be absolutely head to toe in lycra.
How about I just have that?
You just want the suit?
Yeah.
To lounge around in at home. I'm not sure I want to see that. Maybe if you could wear it as an underlayer, I'd accept it.
Okay, well...
The other thing in tourism, though, there's in 2017, National Geographic Travelers magazine declared Slovenia the country with the most sustainable tourism.
That was all the casinos, right?
Yeah, and it's quite an ecologically friendly country. It's got tons and tons of forest. It's got about half of the country is forested. It's the third most forested country in Europe, actually.
Wait, half of the country is forested?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of trees.
Well, it's more than half in actual fact. And the only two countries in Europe as a percentage
Right.
are Finland and Sweden. So you have to go fully Scando to get better than Slovenia.
Are Slovenians very small Ewok type people?
Not to my knowledge, but I couldn't promise no. It's possible. I haven't met them all.
Nub Nub sounds a little bit like Ljubljana.
Right, I'm going to declare Slovenes not to be Ewoks at this point. But if that's what you like. In fact, actually, no, I can prove they're not Ewoks. They're very smart people. Slovenia's education is the 12th best in the world, 4th best in the European Union.
That's amazing.
Famous Slovenes, this education is obviously working quite well because the most famous Slovene in the list that I looked at was a philosopher, in fact, a chap called Slavoj Žižek.
Okay, what did he say?
He said, blooming hell, it's complex, isn't it? Life.
Wow, that is profound. No wonder he's famous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm paraphrasing somewhat.
Yeah, I bet that's on mugs and T-shirts all over the place.
It's his signature thought.
Gosh, it's complex.
I can give you an actor who was on a show called Damages. He was an Emmy Award-winning actor called Zeljko Ivanek.
Okay.
I can give you a Hull City footballer.
Don't know any of these, by the way.
No, I didn't either. I can give you one you will have heard of. Though.
Yep, go on.
Melania Knavs.
Well, the only Melania I know is the Trump Melania.
Nay Knavs in this case. Yes, she is a Slovenian, now a naturalised American citizen. So
Sure.
I will not declare her Slovenian. I'll allow the Slovenian people to decide whether she counts or not.
Political?
Okay, brief Slovenia facts.
Okay.
In 2019, Slovenia was number 4 in wine consumption per capita.
Right. That's a lot of wine.
It's a lot of wine. Number 4. I'm curious as to who 1, 2, and 3 are. There's a vineyard for every 70 people.
Wait, what? Is that by law?
No, I don't think you get allocated a vineyard.
Right, okay.
That's the average number.
Because otherwise, no wonder you're drinking so much.
So you've got an allocation that you have to get to every year.
It's not like by postcode.
That would be amazing. Your vineyard has had a good year. Please accept these bottles. There's also more than 10,000 caves in Slovenia.
Wow.
Which I'm assuming is where they put all the wine.
Yeah, there's going to be a whole bunch of hidden stuff in those caves, isn't there? 10,000. Do they have bears? Are there bears living in the caves?
Well, let me tell you about cave bears. So, yes, as you say, cave bears. So, Slovenian history, we're going to start. When are we going to start?
Well, I mean, we always start with early man.
We're going to go before early man to
What?
Neanderthal man.
No way!
Pre-man, if you will. They had Neanderthals in the area. They found also the thing called the Divja Babe flute, the oldest known musical instrument in the world, and it's made out of a cave bear femur.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
Have they played it?
No, it's not entirely beautifully intact. It's got some damage, some light damage to the surface.
Wouldn't you want to hear what a cave bear leg sounded like?
I kind of would. I suspect it's one of those things where you think, I could like to listen to some tunes. Do I want to kill a cave bear for it?
My guess is that Neanderthals sat around blowing the marrow out of a bone, and one of the bones had a little hole in it, and it made a little woo-woo noise.
You thought, I can do something with this.
Yeah. Added another little hole, eventually. Diddle-doodle-doodle-doodle-doo.
And you could hear the bear coming because of the noise it made as it walked.
On a windy day.
Hello and welcome to the Cabin Club. We are Uggan and Neanderthals and this is the band. On the stretched Aurochs hide, it's the one and only Grug. And on the badger ribs, it's Gerg. Looking good, Gerg. On the bag of snakes, we have Oog. Oh yeah, nice. Next up, on the strangely twangy bit of vine we found by the lake, it's Mrs. Ugg. On vocals, it's these little terrors, you know them as well as I do, the Tribes Kids. On the bear femur, it's Ugrug. And on the horns of that animal we ate last night, it's Ugrag. Real smooth. And
And on the other horn, who could this be? It's only his little brother, old Grog. Play it loud, boys. And finally, on the pile of hollow logs, introducing... Oh yeah, that's the band. Now let's all have a very groovy Stonehenge.
Right, so after Neanderthal, we do have early man, the early Bronze Age. We have what is known as the Urnfield culture in the area.
The Urnfield. That sounds like an Englishman.
It does.
Urnfield, bring me my tea.
It does, but it is, in fact, a culture. And they're called the Urnfield because they would burn their dead, apparently, put them in an urn. And
put it in a field?
Yeah, put it in a field.
No way.
So, yeah, I don't think the archaeologists were really stretching when they came up with that name, but yes,
Right.
That's what they did. Then we get to the 1st century BC and the Romans arrive.
Of course.
They conquer the area and established it as provinces called Pannonia and Noricum.
If there's one thing I've learned from history, it's the Romans were pretty good at doing conquering.
They did a lot of arriving and then going, yep, this is us. Then we had the barbarian invasions, during which the barbarians...
Barbared?
No, they
hair.
invaded. They may have also cut hair, I don't know. Then we have Slavic tribes starting to arrive. It is a Slavic area at the moment. 800 or so, it becomes part of the Carolingian Empire. That's the Frankish Empire.
Who?
Carolingian. It's based out of France, basically.
Okay.
Hungarian invasion in the late 9th century, and then in the 14th century, most of the area becomes part of the Habsburg Empire,
Okay.
which we have encountered before, a very long-lasting Austro-Hungarian empire.
Just taking you a step back, you said that the Hungarians did some invading there. It's not often you hear about Hungarians invading. I always think of them as being the ones to be fairly invaded.
Well, I think in that part of the world, everyone gets a go eventually.
Just pass the stick and it's your go.
When the conditions are just right, you get to have a go at all your neighbours, and because you've got hundreds of years of them having a go at you, there's all these deep-seated resentments built
Waiting
up.
to go. All right.
So they soldier on as part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire until World War I, and then they soldier on some more as soldiers, literally. They lose, of course, the First World War.
Yeah, they're on the wrong side of history there.
Exactly. So after the war, Slovenia declared itself an independent nation. It joined together with Montenegro, Serbia and Croatia to form a new nation called the Kingdom of the Serbs, Croats and Slovenes.
The SCS.
Yeah, the KSCS.
KSCS.
Yeah, it's not a brilliant brand name, but
It's not great.
Arguably, that could be why in 1929 they decided to change the name to Yugoslavia.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Famous for the little car.
The Yugo.
The Yugo. Do you remember the Yugo?
I do remember the Yugo. So, Yugoslavia bottles along until World War II starts, the sequel, if you will. They were invaded and divided up by Germany, Italy and Hungary when the Axis powers were roaming around the map, taking hold of everything.
Sure.
And the Slovenes fought back, and this is quite important. They conducted a guerrilla war against the Axis powers with an army of partisans.
Right.
I've heard the word partisan being used generally, but specifically they were Yugoslavian communist rebels, essentially. And they were led by someone called Marshal Tito.
Okay.
So when in 1945 the tables turn and the Allies win and the Germans and Italians and Hungarians are all sent home, Marshal Tito becomes the president of Yugoslavia.
Okay, so he just sort of steps into that void, does he? And
Exactly.
says, "Right, I'm gonna lead
Him and
this."
his partisans go, yay, we've liberated our country, and they become a communist nation.
Right. Okay. So not to do with Russia then.
A lot of what we're going to talk about today is how Yugoslavia was a communist country, but it was really quite different to what we think of when you think of the classic Soviet Russian communism. And part of the reason for that is they started kind of, if you will, natively communist. The partisans were communist. Tito was a communist. They weren't declared communist by Soviet troops rolling in with tanks and going, you're part of the Eastern Bloc now.
Oh, right. Okay.
And in fact, Tito would stand up to Stalin in a way that you don't really see in most of the other countries.
That sounds foolish.
Yes, no,
Notoriously grumpy man.
He was a grumpy man. Yes, in fact, their spat broke out into an exchange of mean letters.
Whoa,
no less, in
dear sir.
This was in 1948, where they initially characterised it as a difference in policy opinion, but it soon becomes quite the bicker between these two communist leaders. It was related to the way in which Tito wanted to expand Yugoslavia's influence, and Stalin didn't want to do it.
Okay.
They also wanted to get involved in what was going on in Greece at that time, and Stalin wanted to stay out of it. But Yugoslavia was in this weird position where it was part of the Eastern Bloc, but it was also quite open to Europe. It had relations with the West. Are you aware of Churchill's speech, from Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent?
No, what does it sound like?
It goes,
from Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent.
So Trieste in the Adriatic is just over the Slovenian border. So he's literally talking about the dividing line of which Slovenia is just on one side.
Because, I mean, it's a tiny country, right? It's amazing that it even
Yugoslavia
survives.
was much bigger.
Oh, of course.
So we're talking about Yugoslavia has Croatia, it's got Montenegro, it's got all these other areas, other countries in the area. So yeah, they're much more significant at that point. But then, we think of the Cold War as East versus West, right?
We do.
Russians and Americans, pretty much. But actually, in 1961, in Belgrade, which was Yugoslavia, is now Serbia, Tito and some other national heads established what they called the non-aligned movement. And this was a group of countries that wanted to not be associated with East or West. They wanted to be non-aligned, and that was what that was all about.
South?
Just other, I think.
Just other.
And just count us out, really,
okay.
on the sidelines rather than being in the thick of it.
We just want to be communist and just be left alone.
Well, pretty much. So what ended up happening is Yugoslavia is kind of and in Slovenia, particularly in Yugoslavia, it was kind of a richer area. It's more liberal, probably. And it's a communist country, but it doesn't behave in really a lot of the ways that we would expect to see a communist country. And we'll see how this plays out, particularly in the 70s, because then what happens in our period is the kind of decline of communism in this region. So the 70s and the 80s, the nations within Yugoslavia are pushing for further independence. 91, we know the Soviet Union falls apart, but so does Yugoslavia at exactly the same time, not exactly in the same year. So Slovenia eventually declares its own independence from Yugoslavia on June 25th, 1991, and becomes its own country, and sort of drifts its interests back into the sort of the Western side of things because it joins the EU and NATO in 2004.
So can I ask a question then? So if it's part of Yugoslavia and Tito's in charge of Yugoslavia, who's in charge of Slovenia to say we don't want to be part of this anymore?
So each nation would have its own regional government, and we'll talk a little bit more about how, well, I'll tell you now that in 1974 they had a constitutional change, and that said, basically devolved a lot more power to the regional, and in this case regional meaning what we now know as countries, Slovenia, Croatia, to manage their own affairs. So a lot more like an American federal system.
Oh, I see.
Regions making their own laws to some extent, and then a central nation. But actually the direction of travel there was that it started by regionalising, and then they all became their own countries, and the whole country fell apart.
So it'd be like Minnesota saying, we don't want to do this anymore.
We'll just be our own country.
We're going to be our own thing.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And that's part of the story that we'll see, this gradual movement from centralised communist state control to more regional, independent individualism in a variety of different ways.
It's a bold move, isn't it? I suppose they could see that the fall was coming and they weren't going to get like reprisals or be attacked for saying we declare our independence.
Yeah, I think things were changing in general, and in 1980 was when Marshal Tito actually died. So he was in charge from the end of World War II to 1980, and I think that probably made quite a big difference as well. I think he was holding it together quite a lot.
That's a long time to be in charge, and it shapes a lot of generations.
Well, those post-war communist nations, I think that was quite a common feature, wasn't it?
Mm.
So that's Slovenia. Are you oriented? Do you feel you've got a rough idea of where we're at?
I am. That's given us the history. It's given us a little bit about Slovenia. I guess I'm just wondering about light. How's that fitting in? Well,
let me shed some light on that matter.
Good.
What can I say about light? Well, it became quickly apparent as I started this that light is one of those words that's got many meanings. Literal, light as opposed to heavy, light as opposed to dark.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But also metaphorical. Trip the light fantastic. Light ale.
Neon light.
Yes, there are neon lights.
Light mayo.
Light, yes. Yeah. Is this do you need to get this out of your system?
I'm thinking of more. I'm trying to think of more.
Electric light, light relief, trip the light fantastic, light the way, light a match, lighter than air, light ale, light of my life, any more?
Light. Oh, light a match? Did you say that?
I've done that yet. Okay,
damn it.
Never mind.
I get the idea.
Let's just start. I'll light the blue touch paper and we'll shed some light on the transition of a nation.
I'm sure I can think of one.
Look, it'll be fine. And the good news is it's going to be pretty light. Right, before we do start, there's a lot to cover, and you are going to need your energy. So how would you like a light snack?
Oh, that's good, because that's light.
That's light again, yes.
Is it a Slovenian snack?
It is indeed. So we like to sample the foods and drinks of a country that we're looking at. So I tried to look up light meals available with a Slovenian provenance.
Right, makes sense.
I found a couple of things. Firstly, sausage crunch style from the Upper Carniola region.
Right, fine.
That is pork with hard bacon, salt, pepper and garlic, which you can have with sauerkraut or sour turnip.
Yeah, that sounds heavy.
That does sound
doesn't sound light at all.
Okay, how about an HHE zlikrofi?
Well, I mean, it sounds nice.
Doesn't it? It's a stuffed dumpling. It's noodle dough filled with potato stuffing. It's for men who work in a mine.
Right. Yeah, again, not very light.
No, that's not right, is it? Okay, so you'll be hard pressed to find light foodstuffs in Slovenian cooking because it tended to be for people working in the fields all day long. So it's hardy working folk food.
Right.
So the lightest dish is zganci.
Okay, and what's that?
Well, that is flour
Right.
cooked in water.
And?
No, that's it.
Wait, flour in water.
So I'll give you the
Isn't
recipe.
that glue?
I'll give you the recipe real quick. You boil some salted water and throw in the flour. Cook for 15 minutes. Drain and season, just to lighten it up a bit, with some lard.
Lard.
Flour.
Season with lard.
Flour,
there you
water,
go.
and lard. There you go. For
those that don't know, lard is fat, right?
Fat. That's
Just pure fat.
Yes, it's a side dish that's meant to replace potatoes and pasta, and you eat it with your sausage and your sauerkraut.
Okay.
Light.
Light, yeah. I mean, it doesn't sound terrible. I mean, it does sound terrible.
But it certainly doesn't sound light in any event. But
I thought Ewoks only ate berries.
well, they're not Ewoks, right? We're going to have calls from the Slovenians. We are not Ewoks. So the Bled Cream Cake. Bled being a location in Slovenia. Lake Bled. It's a leading tourist destination, in fact, and it's just the most picture postcard place you can imagine. These beautiful Alps in the background, this lovely lake. There's a little island on the lake with a church that looks a bit like a fairy tale castle on the island.
I felt my shoulders relax just as you were describing that.
Honestly, it was so beautiful. It was ridiculous.
With a name like Lake Bled, though, you would expect it to be red.
Yeah, no, that was an unfortunate name in terms of the English version of the word.
Yeah.
But their cake ain't bad either, let me tell you.
Okay.
Apparently there are a number of sort of similar Balkan cakes to this, but this one was specifically created by a guy called Istvan Lukačević. So he was the manager of the Park Hotel Patisserie in Bled.
Nice.
So he invented this in 1953, this very specific version of this cake, and it's puff pastry, and then an egg custard, then a nice light whipped cream,
Okay.
and then on either end puff pastry at the top and the bottom, a little bit like a vanilla slice, I would say. And it's got a protected designation of origin status, so it means you can only buy it from patisseries at Lake Bled
Okay.
and Croydon. Okay, it's not official.
That's
Croydon
not
one,
official, is it?
Let me tell you, I had a go at making this. Now, caveat, I did give it a go, but I did co-opt my mother to help me
Ah,
with this.
that's great.
So me and mum had a go at this, and now I'm going to go get it, and we'll see how you enjoy it.
All right, I'm looking forward to it.
So here we go. I've got to be honest with you. I expected to be unveiling really a puddle of cream or something disastrously wrong, but I'm relatively pleased with how this has come out.
Okay, well, let's open it up. I'm looking at a brown paper package at the moment.
Yes, so
Oh, look at that.
here we have it. They're supposed to be square, nice, sharp sides,
Yeah.
with a clear layer of sort of white cream on the top and the yellow egg custard underneath. But I think the proof of this is going to be in the tasting. But
All right, I'm going for it.
it was super complicated to make. You had to sift things and blend things and merge things and
Sift things and blend things.
yeah, it did not play to my skills. But I think we've done okay here.
Okay, so got a good bit of all four layers here. All right, here we go.
Here we go. I'm excited.
Peter, I'm not sure. I'm going to have another mouthful.
Oh, I see. Well, oh no.
Oh my God.
There's also a bit of rum in there. It's
Rum?
vanilla.
Well, all of the photos will be available on our website, hhepodcast.com. And I am devouring this slice.
Yeah, he's gone right
This
at
light
it.
bite has gone.
I don't think I'll get a job in Lake Bled anytime soon.
No?
So-
Well, I would buy. I'd pay for that.
wow.
Genuinely.
We're in business.
I mean, a couple of pennies. No, that's really good. Really delicious, Pete.
The short staccato part of the tune can be achieved by blocking the blowhole with your tongue.
So, you know how I was going on that journey last weekend? Well, my neighbour came round and gave me a light bulb. Said, take this with you. I said, no, I travel light.
Anyway, before we begin, I owe a debt of gratitude to a fellow I came across through sharing my questions on Reddit.
Okay.
They firstly answered a bunch of questions and gave me a bunch of ideas for things to look at.
Well, that was good of them.
And then they said, would you like some more help? And I said, I very much would like some more help. So I have to say, Gregor from Reddit, massive thank you. Huge amount of input. He did loads of research for me.
Yeah.
He also is a Slovenian. I hope he's Slovenian. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I've been very misled. And he's a primary source because he would talk about things he remembered as well.
way.
So we've got some original research, if you will. And yeah, Gregor from Reddit, absolutely amazing. My hat is tipped off to you. You did such a good job and made this so much easier for me. And you hugely lightened my load.
That's another good one. Hey, did you warn him that his work will be graded by Dursley?
He is aware of Dursley, in fact. So
Prepare for an E, Gregor.
okay, so let's get this party started with parties. We're going to talk about bonfire parties. Bonfires being the provider of light in this case. Throughout the 70s, there's an old tradition, but it was also popular during the 70s, was the traditional May Day bonfire. And they'd have this in every major town and village and on the hills. And May Day is, I think, almost globally a workers' holiday.
Right.
Yeah, so in a communist nation, May Day is particularly a kind of a celebration time, and obviously May Day goes back way, way, way longer than communism, but it somehow transformed more recently into a kind of a workers' holiday. And the newspaper Delo in 1978 reported, already on the eve of the holiday, thousands of working people and young people gathered at bonfires which burned on countless hills and in song and dance celebrated prayers which in a unique way expresses the humanity and solidarity of the working class.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Right? But once a year doesn't seem like enough to have a party. But good news, we're still going to have more parties. But here's a local oddity that I found really interesting, which is that they have firefighters in their party scene.
Well, that makes sense. You're going to have loads of bonfires raging. You need some people hanging around to put them out.
Much more specific than that. So here's the story. This is what Gregor told me. Obviously, in history, you had rural Slovenes living in their villages and less built up areas. And in those areas, there's not tons of opportunities for socializing.
Okay.
So what would become the sort of default mode for getting together as a community was the church. So Sundays, everyone would get together and everyone would wear their Sunday best. And that would be not just a religious event, but a social event as well.
Right. In the film Star Wars Episode 6...
Is this Ewok based?
The Ewoks got together over a bonfire where they were going to cook Han Solo, if you remember, on a spit. I'm just saying.
Slovenes are not Ewoks. Oh dear. So yeah, look, the church has become the sort of local community centre almost. But then communism comes over, and communism famously is not keen on the church. The opium of the masses, as the saying went. And so religion became pretty much forbidden. So what happened in Slovenia is the church as a centre of rural socialising gets replaced by local volunteer fire department.
Okay, makes sense.
So basically every town and village has a volunteer fire department, and they've got a truck, they've got a firehouse, they've got radios, and they fight fires. But mostly they organise fire parties.
Right. Wait, what? They organise fire parties?
Yeah, they put on these, they sound like almost small-scale outdoor festivals.
That's like policemen organising like a bank job.
Yes, they're only called fire parties after firemen themselves. They don't set fire to everything. They're called the Gasilec Veselica, which is a fireman party, fireman festival. And an invitation, this is some text from invitation. We will dance, eat, drink, whatever we say. We will rejoice in front of the new fire station, and food and drink will be provided.
I love that bit at the end. That's great. As many dumplings, sausages and fat as you need.
Yeah, and it sounds like they have bands, local bands perform. They might have comedians. They might have someone just put on a local show, local talent kind of thing.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah, it sounds amazing, doesn't it? So yeah, that's just a weird thing that they have fireman parties because the church came out, the fire people came in, and people want to get together one way or another.
You can't stop fun.
Oh, are you all right, love?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Did something happen at work?
I don't know. I'm just not sure I can do this anymore.
But being a volunteer firefighter is all you've ever wanted.
But the things I have to do, love, the horrors I've seen, Just today, I had to put out a raging argument between two bachelorette parties. They were fighting for the time on the dance floor.
Oh no.
Oh yes, flaming sambuca everywhere. Oh, I'll never forget the smell as long as I live.
Oh, poor you.
And the sounds. Oh, the sounds. They still ring in my ear at night, love. I can't sleep. Umcha. 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 Umcha.
Oh, perhaps you're right. Maybe it's time to give up the firefighting.
But I am a firefighter, love. God damn it, I have an obligation. If I don't put my hands in the air like I just don't care, well then who will?
Oh, my love, but you don't have to.
I don't have a choice. I have to do this. The long nights and the drinking and the dancing. I'm a fireman, and I will do what a fireman must.
All right, well, let's just forget about it and just go for a nice dinner, shall we?
What, at the restaurant? Oh no, that burned down last night.
So at a party, what are you going to do, Ryan?
Dance.
Dance, yes. What else are you going to do?
Sing.
Sing. And what else are you going to do?
I'm going to engage the company of a lady.
Oh my good Lord. I recommend you do this instead. Drink wine, Ryan. You're going to drink wine.
Yes, that's before the next step.
Your courage that you need. So yes, how about a glass of light white wine, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I prefer red, but sure.
Well, too bad, because red is not light and does not fit into the theme.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah.
But we discussed the Slovenian love of wine, and so I've brought along a little bit of light Slovenian Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh, fantastic. Cake and wine.
So I asked the guy in the shop, I said, would you describe this as a light wine? And he said, well, I wouldn't. I said, shut up.
All I'm hearing is yes.
I shall decide whether or not this is a light wine with my good friend Ryan by sampling the delights of it. So should we have a little now?
Nice. So this is a Slovenian wine.
It is, yes.
Okay, so this is Krasno, a Sauvignon Blanc, a Ribolla Gialla from Slovenia. The back label says, this vibrant Sauvignon Blanc shows delicate hints of yellow peppers, elderflowers, and golden delicious apples.
Oh, the lightest of all the fruit.
Yeah, it's got good acidity, dry taste, and a soft elegant finish. Perfect with pasta, salads, fish, and light cheese.
There you go. There,
Got it in at the end.
All right, let's have a go at this,
All right,
shall we?
let's do it. Shall I open it up?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, here we go. He is pouring the wine as we speak. It's got a kind of corn golden hue to it. I'm good at describing wine.
You're really talented.
It has a very pleasant odour. Ooh, sweet to the taste. It's got a brackish hue.
Brackish. You're just making up words at this point.
Yep.
So here's the thing. While we're drinking, before we drink...
Yep, before we drink.
We should drink this with a national anthem.
Yeah, finally.
So the Slovenian national anthem is called A Toast. So what we're going to do, we're going to listen to the national anthem. It's the lyrics are taken from Zdravljica, which is a poem by the romantic Slovene poet from the 19th century, France Prešeren.
Okay.
And I will read the lyrics, a translation of the lyrics, obviously, over the tune. And then at the end, we shall have a toast.
Oh, wonderful.
Instructed.
That's very cool. Okay.
Here we go. God's blessing on all nations who long and work for that bright day when over earth's habitations no war, no strife shall hold its sway, who long to see that all men free shall no more foes but neighbours be.
Wonderful.
A toast.
A toast. What do we say in Slovenian?
Oh, I don't know. Toast?
Yup, yup.
Oh, my Lord. Here we go.
Delicious.
Good stuff, huh? So wine in Slovenia actually has a really long tradition. It goes back before even the Romans. They actually were making wine in the Celtic era before the Romans arrived, which is relatively unusual, but I suppose they're quite close to Italy, so you can see how that might have happened.
Straightforward making booze, though, wasn't it, back in the day? Fermented fruit on the floor that's rotting. You just drink some of that. Isn't that booze?
I mean, that is fundamental. Yes, I suppose it is. But I think there was probably some processing that undertaken.
Oh, okay.
So there's 3 main wine regions in Slovenia: Podravska in the northeast, Posavska in the east, and Primorska.
They all sound very similar, Pete.
That last one is the most developed one, and it includes the area that this one is from.
Oh, nice.
In this Brda area, it's right overlapping with the Collio region of Italy, to the extent that they're actually, from a wine person's perspective, the same place. They're geographically the same, climate is the same, just they've been cut by the national border. Apparently, a guy who owns the Movia winery said basically everything, the grapes, the regions, the town, has 2 names, a Slovenian name and an Italian name, because they're just the same place, but they happen to be one of those border places that has kind of dual identity.
I love that stuff, where you can just sort of cross the border, have lunch in Italy, return home for your evening meal back in Slovenia.
And a nice glass of wine. So nowadays there's lots of little and medium-sized vineyards selling decent wine, but in the 70s it was a little bit different. And this is kind of the beginning of me trying to tell this story of how the changes in Yugoslavia and took us from centralized to regional, from monolithic to individualized.
Okay.
And what happened was it started out in state ownership prior to World War II. Prior to World War II, there were people who owned vineyards, but communism, not a fan of private ownership. So they developed these state-owned vineyards, and that meant centralization and collectivization. And Gregor put it very nicely. He said, in socialism, there were 2 wines. There was the red wine and there was the white wine.
Right. That does also reflect my wine tastes when I'm in a restaurant.
Do you have white? Oh, thank goodness. So yeah, they did do some export, and they did try and improve their output. And in 1967, the Business Association for Viticulture and Enology of Slovenia was created.
Okay.
And this was an attempt to develop the wine industry, I guess, for export. And it's not a huge tell, but in 1971, there was a Vipava Agricultural Combine founded, which I think is a kind of a local organization where instead of trying the nation state trying to solve the problems of the wine industry, this was a kind of regionalized, still a combine, still a collective unit, not a lot of private industry, but they kind of devolved this problem solving to the
people who know about it.
Combines, yeah. And that's a kind of a micro version of what's happening in general in Yugoslavia. Big central state becoming more regional individual.
And is this because they want to make money?
They want foreign currency particularly, because that was of great value, obviously, economically. And
doesn't sound very communist, that's all.
Well, no, and that's what we're going to discover is this is a very non-communist communist nation, right, okay, in a lot of ways. You think of, we're going to talk about industrial design in a minute, but when you think of the sort of monolithic pragmatism and plainness, if you like, of what we think of when we think of communism,
yeah,
the Yugoslavian story is really quite different.
Okay.
So, just in general, in 70s Yugoslavia, we've established that they had American aid sent to them, so they had sort of openness to the West. Tito has had his row with Stalin, so he's not quite in the communist fold in the typical way. So they were never quite this Soviet communist bloc that we think of. And as I mentioned, in 1974, the constitution changed, so regional, which are now national, so Slovenia was a nation, became more powerful in terms of their ability to manage themselves. And it became, the constitution says it's a state based on the sovereignty of nations, meaning Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, those different nation states, the authority and self-management of working people and all workers. So it's less of a country and it's starting to become a franchise almost.
Right.
And the federal bodies were weakened, and the nations start becoming a lot more like nations, and you're losing the centre and you're empowering the local, basically.
And people are happy with this?
I think it's probably a mix. We're into the last decade of Tito's life, so I think Tito was trying to hold it together, but also acknowledged that there was forces much bigger than he could control.
Okay. So
that's the scene. So let's talk light, specifically industrial development in the 70s. So when you if I say think of communist design, what leaps to mind?
Oh, blimey. Right. Okay. I think statues, I think grey, featureless buildings, utilitarian cars and furniture and like just boring, of dull.
And that's kind of what I get as well. So that's where I started. And then it turns out that things in Yugoslavia were rather different. So we're going to start with a company called Meblo. And they were created in 1947 by the state, and it's a furniture company. So there's a lot of furniture companies in Yugoslavia, in part because what have they got a lot of?
Furniture.
Wood.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, the furniture industry becomes really big in Slovenia. And at one point, 10% of Slovenian workers worked in the furniture industry.
That many people?
10%, yeah.
All making furniture?
All beavering away at benches. So Meblo start out, they develop into making mattresses and sofas. And in 1963, this is indicative of their sort of openness to Western ways. They invite Norwegian experts to come and update the company. The factory develops rapidly. In 1970, they present a range of furniture and cabinets at the Belgrade Furniture Fair.
Oh, cool.
Right, this is called the E program. It's designed by Lurka Finskar. And basically, it's modular-ish furniture that you can adjust and align to your own desires. In 1971, this designer writes in Industrial Design, which I think is a magazine, lifestyle is changing. People are looking for a more informal, easier and freer way of life. People would not want to be burdened with many static possessions that are only used one way. On the contrary, they want to change their environment.
Well, that's like an obvious thing to us here in 2022. But at that time, it really was. Before that, you had the furniture that was handed down to you or was handmade and bought for you. You had your bookcase and your table and your chair, and that was about it.
Well, it's more radical than that, of course, because there was also the state would provide. So the state didn't ask you what you fancied. The state provided the chair for the people and the table
people's
for the
chair.
people.
Yeah.
So this notion of people wanting different things and actually being driven by what people want rather than what the state decided they needed is all part of this movement away from classic state-controlled centralized communism.
That's really cool. I guess this is the time as well where materials start to shift and change as well, right?
So this is the 70s, and as you say, material science is developing, and the 70s we associate with plastics, right? We've got these new materials that are becoming feasible now where they weren't before. On light specifically, this company that was previously making furniture in the 70s, they teamed up with Harvey Guzzini.
Harvey Guzzini.
Harvey Guzzini.
Who's that?
Who's that? Harvey Guzzini is not a person, actually. A common error, apparently.
Is it a giant rabbit?
It is almost, yes. It's an Italian lighting manufacturer.
Right.
That was founded by the Guzzini brothers. So Guzzinis are people, but there were 6 of them.
Right.
And they named it Harvey after the James Stewart film with the big rabbit.
I was right.
So what Guzzini do is they design plexiglass acrylic lights. There's these kind of orangey, mushroomy, blobby shapes in super 70s colours and shapes and styles.
I can picture them in my mind.
I think you can. What you're thinking?
Yeah.
That is what they look like, I assure you. And they actually designed 33 different types of lamps for the Meblo company. Meblo, something like that. And you can still buy them, actually. If you've got a few £100 to spare on a light fitting.
No way.
You can actually still get these Meblo Guzzini designed
like an eBay or something?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. They're not making them. You can just buy them secondhand.
Yeah, I don't think they make them. I couldn't really find out what happened to the Meblo company and whether it's still there, exists in some in some form. But yeah, that's lighting in...
What company?
It was Meblo.
Meblo.
Oh dear, this was before the days of audio logos, I think. There was a slight drawback to having a beautiful light fitting, which was in the 70s in Slovenia. They did have a little bit of a problem with blackouts.
Oh.
So Gregor remembers that there would be an announcement beforehand that there was going to be a blackout at certain times of the day. So from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, there will be no electricity. And then everyone would gather their batteries and their candles and flashlights, I guess, and just wait for all the electricity to go off and then deal with it.
That's kind of common though, isn't it? Like we had that here in the UK.
We did. I mean, I am of the era that knows that you keep candles under the sink in the event of a power cut.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're quite old enough for that, but...
yeah, just about. I remember some power cuts back in the day. More recently, though, I know that Los Angeles has been having lots of planned power cuts. Brownouts, that's it.
Yeah, so as you could not... I don't think we can judge the Slovenians for their problems with electricity back in the day. But actually, I didn't have to take Gregor's word for it. I found, or he found it specifically, a 1973 report which said, a few days ago, radio announcers recited that unpleasant refrain several times a day, some consumers will be left without electricity. But, life goes on. And there is more to industrial design than just lights and the Meblo company.
Meblo.
And we're going to look at another company now. This is a company called Iskra.
Yeah, I don't have one for that.
Iskra translates as spark. Does that help?
No.
No. Okay.
But it's light related.
It very much is so, yes. And there's more to come, though, because it was founded in 1946 as a state-owned radio workshop. But they soon start making cinema projectors.
Oh, cool.
Actually, it becomes sort of loads more companies get attached to it, and it becomes bigger and bigger, and it becomes this really quite huge company that's almost a group of companies, really, rather than just one company.
So Slovenia making their own movies?
They do, yes. There are a number of Slovenian films, which we could have been talking about today. And we'll talk about one of them a little bit later, but I didn't focus on film, which was one of my light-based options. But what is interesting about Iskra is they, in 1962, found the first department for industrial design in Yugoslavia. So this is a real statement to say design is going to be really integral to what Iskra does. And in 1963, their own articles of association say all the products with the Iskra trademark are designed in a modern way in the homemade Iskra style. So their brand is going to be design-led, and it's going to be very much front and center of their operation.
I love this. This is great. This is what will attract new consumers, people that are interested in your design, that makes you stand out.
Exactly. They wanted to be competitive, and not just competitive with the state giving them all the work they need, but with Western companies. So they have a designer called Davorin Savnik, who in the 60s up to early 70s was a key member of the design team. And this injection of design into the heart of the Iskra company was very successful. It was said at one time every Yugoslavian home would have at least one Iskra product in it somewhere.
Wow, that's really mainstream then.
So in 1971, there was an exhibition featuring Iskra in Stuttgart in their design centre. So this exhibition, more than 25,000 people went to it, and the curator of the exhibition, a guy called Stein Bernick, said, Iskra's actions have more than once been described as pioneering and avant-garde. The exceptional efforts Iskra and the company's designers invest in industrial design have secured it an exceptional place even today. But the interesting part of that for me was that avant-garde is almost the opposite of what you would think of when you think, what was communist design like? It was absolutely not avant-garde. It was,
no, not at all.
Disliked the abstract and
utilitarian.
And these guys are doing it. They're competing with the West. They're using design to do it. And this includes a very specific 1973 product, the Iskra Minirama.
The Minirama?
Minirama. This is a little portable TV, which you could watch all your favourite shows on. It comes in a bunch of colours. All of the colours I would describe using the word 70s.
Okay.
So, Iskra is making loads of products, super successful, and they grow into the largest Yugoslavian company for electrical goods. But one of the other things they start to do, the beginning of their end is seen here, which is that they start producing products under license to other companies. So they take Western companies' designs and they make them and sell them.
Yeah, it's a good model.
It's a good model, but it basically, over time, the amount of stuff they designed and built for Iskra declined as the amount they
So they're making
made for
more money
companies.
making stuff for other people, so they don't bother with the design.
Yeah, and so they lose their design identity, really. And in 1982, they dissolve their industrial design department. But this is, again, a Yugoslavian story of individuality, uniqueness, design, openness to the West, all the things you don't expect when you think of a central planned economy in a communist state.
Not at all. I need more wine.
Okay, I shall get you more wine.
You know, when I was at university, I didn't have a lot of money, Pete, and I was struggling to pay my electricity bills. So, you know, there were many nights where we didn't have the lights on. Those were some really dark times. Thanks for the wine.
Oh, my good Lord. Okay, so you've got your Minirama TV. You turn it on. What are you going to see? A little light entertainment.
I was going to say Star Wars, but...
The Slovenians are not Ewoks, Ryan.
Some light entertainment. Okay, that's good. Light.
We're going to discover some of what was going on in Slovenian culture. We'll start with this one. 1975, the pxHKV Award. Do you remember the poet was called pxHKV? His name was given to the highest, most prestigious award for artistic achievement in Slovenia. And in 1975, this was given to an old clown.
That's definitely light entertainment, isn't it?
That is as light as it gets, really.
Yeah.
Isn't it? This is a chap called Frane Milczynski, also known as Kekec,
Right?
which means hedgehog.
No way.
Yeah, I guess he was a spiky character.
Yeah, get to the point.
So, hey! So he was born in 1914 in Ljubljana. He starts off life as he starts out as a performer right from the get-go. He's on the radio and he's touring and doing comedy, I guess. Then World War II happens, and during World War II he was interned in the Gonars concentration camp. This is an Italian concentration camp which was holding ethnic Slovenes.
That's not a great thing.
No, it's not a great thing. There was some quite nasty things went down in World War II in the region, the border region between between Slovenia and Italy, and the Italians did not cover themselves in glory, and the Slovenes had their moments as well. So.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, our chap Kekec comes out of the concentration camp and he still wants to entertain people and make people laugh, which is
Can understand why. Yeah, well, yeah, given that.
So he wrote radio plays, puppet shows. He wrote for both adults and children. In 1951, he wrote and appeared in a movie called Kekec, which is kind of a children's adventure movie. It's described as one of the greatest films in Slovenian and Yugoslavian cinema history.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it won in the 13th Venice International Film Festival in 1952. It won a Golden Lion for Best Film in the Youth category.
Wow, okay, cool.
Yeah, I watched it. I did not enjoy it.
Oh, no.
It was. It kind of gave me reminiscences of Heidi. It's in that sort of mountain outdoor. It's from 1951.
Product of its time.
Very much a product of its time.
And in Slovenian.
And in Slovenian, which didn't help. I didn't, and it wasn't subtitled, so I had to basically guess what was going on.
And is he a clown in it?
He appears in it, but he's an incidental character. So, but he wrote it as well. So.
Okay. What kind of clown was he? Was he like, like the typical clown? Or
so he's described often as a satirist, which is quite interesting because obviously you don't expect a huge amount of satire in a communist country either.
Right.
But I was talking to Gregor about this and like, how does a clown or a satirist poke fun at the establishment and how did he get away with it in particular? And Gregor was saying on the one hand, this guy was so popular, he was really beloved. And so there really wasn't anything in it for Tito or the government to crush him because it probably would have backfired on them quite badly. It seems that Tito's view was kind of a better out than in kind of thing, and trying to squash these things isn't going to work. I think was where he came from on this. But in the case of Kekec himself, it was pretty mild stuff.
Okay, so he wasn't
sitting there going, "These guys are terrible," and Tito is a particularly bad maniac. Actually, Gregor shared with me some cartoons and comics of the period, and what seemed to be the theme was you could make fun of the system in a reasonably abstract way. So you could say management are annoying, but you couldn't say John is a bad manager.
Oh, so that way, if you are the management, you can say, well, they don't mean us. They mean the other management.
That seems to be it. So there's sort of subtle and light criticism of various things in the abstract. That seems to be how they've got away with it.
Clever. But he didn't have the big red nose or anything.
No, he didn't do that. His face is, I mean, if you saw a picture of him, you would think, there's a clown. He has just this really clown-like face already.
Really? Okay.
Nature bestowed upon him the face of a clown, really.
Fantastic.
A really expressive, one of those faces that just seems capable of moulding into any shape almost.
Yeah.
So in 1975, he gets the award, and it's for his lifetime of achievement, but his best days are behind him. It's not his heyday, really. So we'll talk a little bit about what was actually going on in the sort of day-to-day culture of Slovenia. But first, let's have a little listen to what Kekec sounds like.
To pesmico malo zapel bom za šalo, porednim otrokom pozdrav. Za vse razgrajače, ki trgajo hlače in vedno počno, kar ni prav.
Very good. I enjoyed that.
Ah, good, excellent. But there's probably more interesting things to go on if you want to get the pulse of Slovenia in the 70s. So at the moment, we'll start looking at the mainstream, and then we'll see how some of the more individual things that were going on differ. So this is from the Slovenian Song Festival, which is the sort of Eurovision of Slovenia, I guess. And this is 1976 winner. This is Iskra Minirama.
Prišel je kakor veter, v sanjavi svet želja, odkrila sem.
So that's your sort of mainstream, that's your music mum and dad are listening to, right? But underneath, as I say, we've got in Yugoslavia, fragmentation, individuality emerging. And hip young things aren't going to be listening to that. They're going to listen to Radio Student.
Obviously, they're listening to Radio Student.
Established in 1969 by the Student Organisation of the University of Ljubljana.
Okay.
Or you might be listening to The Moped Show. This is a satirical, humorous radio show started in 1978 on Radio Ljubljana.
Okay.
Created by a humorist named Toff.
Toff
Tone Fornetzi was his name.
Okay.
And that was a Moped Show was a favourite of Gregor's. So this is one of his memories.
Wonderful.
Probably bigger in the 80s, but you're looking at the tail end of the 70s was when it started, 78. Or they might have been listening to this. It's flipping Ewoks.
It's Ewoks, yeah.
Slovenians are not Ewoks, Ryan.
This is what they were listening to.
This is not what they were listening to, Ryan. Slovenians are
catchy.
not Ewoks.
It's catchy. Sounds like having a good old time.
Cease and desist. Okay, this is a band that was starting out just 1 year. Bear in mind, this is 1 year after Ditka was winning her contest in 1976.
Okay.
Put your mind into the glamorous music venue of Mosti High School.
What does that mean?
This translates as Ljubljana is sick.
What, like
Not
cool?
in a cool way, no, in a unwell way. It was the 70s. Sick's very modern.
Yeah.
Probably
Nowadays, they'd be saying Ljubljana is based.
Probably, whatever that might mean. So this was a band called Pankrti, the Bastards, it translates as.
Really? The Bastards?
So they billed themselves as the first punk band behind the Iron Curtain. And they've got a pretty good case for that, to be honest. They released their first album in 1980, Doldkatcht, which translates as boredom. So they were just starting out at the end of the 70s. One of the politicians, France Poppet, said punks spit on the achievements of socialism.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally their thing.
It was very much their thing, wasn't it? I can't imagine they were going, yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, like, well, what did you think they were doing? Are they still going? Can I go see the Bastards now?
So they're not. They split up. That was their last album.
So it's not like Rolling Stones. They're not still out there.
They're not still out there trying to make things happen. But they did have a reunion gig at the same time as the Sex Pistols had a reunion gig in, I can't remember the year, but I think it was in the 2000s or thereabouts. Mm-hmm. But no, they are not currently going. I think the lead singer is still with a band, but not these guys, I'm afraid. So these guys were the first punk band, but punk became a thing a little bit in Slovenia, in Yugoslavia. Apparently one of the Ljubljana's main squares became known as Johnny Rotten Square.
Right, okay.
And it spread out. And then in 1980, there was a big rock festival, the Novi Rock Festival, which was supported by Radio Student.
Radio Student!
Radio Student. So that's punk. There's lots of individualism happening. There are more things. And I want to introduce you, my friend, to a bit of avant-garde Balkan prog folk.
Oh, well, you don't need to. I know this stuff intimately.
Well, you're familiar with Begnergrad then?
Obviously.
Yeah. Well, this apparently was a real influential band in world music.
Yeah.
I think this is the acceptable face of the accordion. I think I would describe it as.
Acceptable face.
The acceptable face. So a guy called Bratko Bibic was a Ljubljana native.
Right.
And in the 70s, this was a huge group, apparently, of avant-garde accordionists and band members.
It's an odd thing, isn't it, the accordion? It's a bit like the musical instrument version of patting your head and rubbing your stomach.
Yes, there is an awful lot going on in accordion. And I always, when I see people playing it, I'm always like, how do you even do that? That's crazy.
Right? Yeah, because you've got to press the keys.
You've got the buttons and there's all sorts going on.
Buttons, keys, and the weird squeezy thing.
But you're thinking of accordion right now, and I want you to hold that thought, and I want the audience to hold that thought.
Okay.
Now I want you to play this and rediscover the accordion as if you'd never heard it before.
All right, let's all hold hands.
It's his Christmas hit. This is amazing. I love this. Like you love the Jezek.
Yeah, I love the Jezek. This is giving me a headache.
I couldn't stop listening to this. I just kept playing it over and over.
The good news, everyone, is that there is 36 minutes of this. I'm not even joking. 36 minutes and 34 seconds.
All I can say, Ryan, is you either get avant-garde Balkan prog folk or you don't.
I think I'm just more of a bastard.
Maybe
Certainly I've been called that in my time.
Hey. So that's it. That's the sounds. And I think what I've been trying to do through this episode is identify ways in which we see what's happening in Yugoslavia as a whole happening in these specific environments, in music or in industry. We're seeing the development of variety, the establishment of individualism, fragmentation, and the dying days of conformity and centralization. And they're the dying days of Yugoslavia itself. So as the 70s fade out, Tito himself also fades out. He steps into the light, as it were, in 1980. As we've discussed, change occurs throughout the 1980s, which were the final years of the final decade of Yugoslavia as a country. And then that takes us just to the early 90s, where it's the end of Yugoslavia as a country. And in 1991, it's the turn of the newly independent Slovenia to step forward into the lights of the world stage. Wrapped it up with line.
Wrapped
there.
it up. Yeah, you threw it in right at the very end. I love that. That was really good, Pete. What a wonderful journey through a very abstract side of Slovenia that we would never normally have known about.
Who would have been talking about industrial design in Slovenia other than us?
To the sounds of a crazed madman on an accordion.
So once again, I do have to thank Gregor, who was responsible for so much of that content.
Yeah. You need to start up a sister podcast called Slovenian History Happened Everywhere. You and Gregor.
We could do it.
I tell you what, Pete, it is weird because, I really enjoyed this episode, but it did remind me that I went to a Chinese restaurant last night.
Oh, my Lord.
No. What?
Nothing, carry on.
I went to, it just reminded me.
Did it?
Yeah.
I imagine there's a story behind that.
There is. So I went to a Chinese restaurant last night and it was really bright in there. And so I called the waiter over.
Yeah.
And I asked if he could dim sum.
Oh my gosh.
You know what time it is? Oh, listen to that sound.
Silky smooth.
My Lord, it's 2022 is treating the Dersolator well. Right, we are going to Dersolate now. So, Peter, do you want to press the button?
I do. Okay, so your country is Chile.
Chile.
Ooh.
Oh, no, okay, I'm good with that.
Chile,
I think it's Chile, isn't it?
Chile. Well, I'll find out next week.
I guess so.
Your time period, sir, is
Yeah.
the information age. What does that mean? That means 1945 to now.
There's going to be loads of information on
There's
that.
a lot of potential there. Now everything hangs on this being a good subject. Your topic is...
This is the one where I get most nervous.
Understandably.
Yeah.
The topic, sir, is
Yeah.
zoology.
Zoology. Okay, what is that? Animals and stuff?
Yeah, in the information age. So animals at computers.
Well, there we go. I am going to be looking at zoology in Chile during the information age of 1945 to present. That's exciting. I'm actually looking forward to that one. I think that's going to be quite good.
I'm keen. Let's see how it goes.
All right. Okay, so we've gone from cakes to wine to accordions and cave bear legs. We've covered it all. Pete, thank you very much. And thank you, listeners, for listening. If you'd like to get in touch about any of the things that Pete has talked about or Gregor has told him to talk about, you can get in touch just to say hello. And you can do that through our website at hhepodcast.com or, just by email at Pete and Ryan at hhepodcast.com.
We'd love to hear from you, and you never know, you might end up featured on a future show, like this week's star listener, Betty. Betty tells us she enjoys the show, and we very much appreciate her support. Thanks, Betty. Hope you're listening.
She's a secret listener.
Yes, not a secret anymore. Everyone knows. We let the cat out of the bag.
Yep, there you go. So look, one way to definitely feature on a future episode is to rate and review on Apple Podcasts. Look, your recommendation really goes a long way to bringing the show to new listeners, and we would really appreciate that. So thank you.
Meanwhile, if you're on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, you can find us at HHE Podcast. If you subscribe to those, you'll get a little ping every time we post a 1-minute animated HHE bite, well worth 60 seconds of your life.
They are fun. And we are going to be back again soon with
The Verdict.
But until then, a huge Slovenian thank you to Peter.
And Gregor.
And Gregor.
Thank you, Ryan.
No worries. And that is it. I guess all that's left to say is...
You've been listening to...
History happened everywhere. Hey, Pete.
Hey, Ryan.
Who's your friend?
Oh, this is the exchange student who's been staying with me.
Oh, what, the Slovenian?
Yeah, that's right. This is Nub Nub.
Oh, hey, Nub Nub. Well, you're a jittery little thing, aren't you?
Actually, you're just in time because some of his mates are coming over and you can meet them too. Speaking of, I'll go get the door.
So, Nub Nub, am I pronouncing that right? Yeah, sure, that's a good idea. Yeah, put some music on.
Here you go, Ryan. Meet the gang.
Oh, wow, there's loads of them.
Yeah, that's right. Look, okay, so this is Wicket, Logray, Paplu in the corner, Chief Chirper, Weechi, Warwick, watch out for that one. Melanie, Chupatrick. Just meet them as the evening goes on.
Right, well, hey, everyone.
You know what, Ryan? Actually, they also bought us some of that Bled Cake you said you liked. So, fancy a slice?
How am I going to eat it, though?
Oh, just use the fork, Ryan. Use the fork.
Nub Nub.
Nub nub noises.